So let me introduce the one that shouldn't need an introduction, the one and only Heloisa, who has been involved in English language teaching for over 26 years as a teacher, teacher educator, material writer, consultant, and manager. Heloisa has recently finished her MA in language education at NILE. And as we can see, and we are going to hear, she specializes in the portrayal of older people in ELT materials. So with no further ado, there we go. You can share your screen with your presentation. And
am I ready?
You can go.
Thank you, darling. Thank you very much for your kind words. And let's go. And I must say, I'm so glad to be speaking right after Sergio. Actually, I'm so glad to be part of this whole project. I'm so proud of being part of this. I'm so happy. And talking right after Sergio, it's amazing because it makes so much sense. And what we're going to talk about now has a lot to do with othering. And the thing is, we are othering ourselves, our future selves. So, we have a lot to talk about. So let me see. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yay. All right. So we need to talk about Granny. The thing is, when we check course books, what we usually see is older people appearing here and there, and more often than not, they are grandparents. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. And we really do need to talk about Granny. Not that she's up to something, but we are up to something, actually. So let's start up with talking about ageism. So ageism is this stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination against people on the basis of their age. And ageism is known as being the most socially normalized kind of prejudice. And what happens is, it's socially normalized, so jokes about older people or othering them, as Sergio was saying, especially in when we talk about power relations and inferiority and even silenced voices. So this is very common when we talk about, when we see the news, when we see relationships in general, in the families, more and more there's been more common. And ageism in the workplace, very common as well, either because you're too old or you're too young for this or for that. And it's just normalized. So when somebody jokes about somebody being too old to use technology, it's okay, it's not challenged. So the same thing if we said, Granny cannot use technology, or older people cannot use technology because they are too old. What if we said Black people cannot use technology because they are too Black, or women cannot use technology because they are too feminine, whatever that means? Would that be fine? Would that be accepted? I don't think so. But when we talk about age, that's okay, that's fine. And it has a lot to do with what Bruna was saying earlier on. It's about empathy. So when you were born, could you use technology? No, you learned somehow, or somebody taught you, or maybe you did it by yourself, but you learned. And maybe you could help somebody, lend a hand and show them how to use, if you know this person who cannot use technology. But then it's just socially normalized. It's okay. Older people cannot do this, cannot do that. And it's really othering. And the most curious thing about ageism is that when we talk about a racist person, it's not like this person will become black in due time, or misogynist, or homophobic. So it's not like these people will become what they fear or what they have prejudice against. But when we talk about ageism, oh well, I have news for you. It will come and grab you. I mean, if everything goes according to the plan, we will all age. Ages are a side effect of being alive, and we all hope we will age. So what about ELT? If in the world, if in our social relations, it's that common, is it as common as that in ELT? Unfortunately. So first of all, I'd like you to take a moment to think about the course books or the materials you've been using, either written by somebody else or written by yourself. Are there older adults in these materials? Are they there? And if they are, where and how are they represented? So for my MA dissertation, I decided to investigate how that was happening in Brazil in course books for lower primary, for the 6th grade here in Brazil, because that's, according to the law, that's the first year students must have English lessons in school, right? And then I decided to investigate how exactly how and if, of course, are older adults portrayed in course books. And then I selected 5 course books for the 6th grade published in Brazil, so by Brazilian companies or Brazilian teams, even if the company was not Brazilian, right, but Brazilian teams, produced in Brazil, these course books. And what I found out was, so I got the course books and I was there just counting images of people in each of them. I will not mention their names because it's not about pointing fingers at people. You know, what happened in these books happens to many other different books. So it's not about pointing fingers at this or that course book. It's really about talking about the general outlook of all this, right? So even international course books, they follow the same pattern. I've already done this for international course books, not with the same precision of counting, but just living through, and this is what I found. So for the Brazilian course books, the 5 Brazilian course books I analyzed, this is what I found. So I count the images of people in general. By images, I mean illustrations, photos, any kind of image showing people, right? And it counted with children, adults, and all kinds of people, images of people. Like the first example there, in this course book, there were 169 images of people. And older adults, of course, I had to judge by appearance, right? Or the context or the lesson. There were 6, exactly 6, which accounts for 3.55% of the images, right? And even the course book that had the most images of people, it had 364 images. There were 10 older adults. That represents 2.75% of images. And well, what happens is, I tend to agree with Cooper and Pratt when they say the percentage of photos of older people needs to correspond approximately to the percentage of older people in the population. Well, here in Brazil, older people represent about 13% of the population, right? So when we have that in mind and we look back at the numbers, we see that one of them reached 7.10%, and that was it, right? All the others were less than 5%, and not even close to the 13% that would be expected, right? But as I said, it's not something that happens only in books written in Brazil, right? Or for the Brazilian public. It happens a lot, and it happens to international course books just the same, right? And well, where are these people? Can you think? Where are older adults in course books? Where can you find them? If I told you you have a minute to check this course book, let's imagine like a beginner one, A1 course book. You have 1 minute to find an older person there. Where would you find them? Think there. Let's see if we agree on some things here. Would they be maybe family tree, a family unit, right? So you have granny, grandpa, that very, let's put it nicely, that very desired, socially acceptable, I don't know, kind of family that you have grandpa and granny, and then they got married and they had children, and so that regular family, as they say. So family tree is bound to find an older adult there, but not because they're acting or something. They're just there in their roles as grandparents, right? And then the adjectives, they're there as well, usually in comparisons like old and young, or agile, or slow, or things like that. You know, it's very easy to find older adults in the adjectives units. And the past actions or habits, that's very common as well, which is a shame. It's usually like, oh, granny used to be beautiful, or this person, usually a very old-looking person, you know, with the hump, and then maybe a walking cane or something like that, glasses, and they used to work, they used to travel, they used to this or that, and now they don't because they're old. So this is very, very common in course books as well, right, which is a shame. And then also we see superlatives. Superlatives is usually where we see them in a bit more positive light, because what usually happens is you see the oldest person to climb a mountain, or the oldest person to run a marathon. So they are doing something, right? Usually that's one of the only instance when we see older adults performing actions, because they are usually very passive, just there, not even moving. And superlative units usually portray the oldest this or the oldest that, right? And that's pretty much it, right? Sometimes we see them popping up here or there, but basically this is where you find them. And who are these people? If they're not the hero, right, who's climbing the mountain or running the marathon, we usually see as a helpless person, the person who needs help, who needs some support there, or the lonely and or grumpy person. More often than not, they come together. So it's lonely and grumpy, because you cannot be old and happy. It's usually, there's association between old and sad, There's a sadness behind all that. So you have to be lonely, you have to be grumpy. And why? Why is that? Or the couple walking the dog. I don't know why, but there is this thing. If you check course books, you're bound to find an older couple walking the dog, especially if they are at the beach. For some reason, people think that is inclusion. So yeah, we think about inclusion. If you check on page 100 and some, you're bound to find a couple walking the dog. And I really don't get that as inclusion, but anyway, they are there. They are definitely there. And the sweet grandparents, of course, because then you just represent older people there, and they're just there. They're sweet, they're grandparents, and in this case, they're not the grumpy one I mentioned above. They're just the sweet grandparents, just there posing for a picture with their grandchildren. And usually what happens is there's nothing else about them. They only exist there in that unit because of their status as grandparents, right? So I can't think of any unit where grandparents talk, for instance. Do you have a listening activity and grandparents are discussing something, they're just talking, or they're just having a conversation with their grandchildren, if it's that important to portray grandparents with their grandchildren, which seems to be a must as well. And what do most of them have in common? Well, they have no occupation. They have nothing, actually. You have no information about them anywhere. So no occupation, no friends. The only kind of social relation that is usually associated to older adults is their family circle, especially considering their children and their children's children, I mean, their grandchildren. So that's it. They haven't got an occupation, no friends. They haven't got hobbies or interests, apart from when they show the grandmother cooking. If you consider that as a hobby or an interest, then, well, sometimes they do. Then you see granny there just cooking for their grandchildren. And they have no names. Or often than not, their names are grandma, grandpa. So that's part of being a person, isn't it? Having a name to start with, and they have no voice. So a person with no voice, no name, no hobbies or interests, no friends, no occupation. Is there a life in this? It doesn't look like, does it? So this is how we usually see older adults represented in course books, which is quite sad. And it goes unnoticed because that's pretty much the way we react to older people in society. Not all of them, not all of us, not all the time. But when we consider the roles of older people in societies like 50, 60 years ago and nowadays, there's this great difference, right? Some researchers think it has to do with technology, because technology means power, means knowledge. So as Sergio was saying, it's othering. It's a lot easier to other an older person. And as I said, when we other older people, we are othering ourselves, and we're telling future generations that it's okay. It's a kind of social annihilation that happens in course books. And when we think of this in course books for children, in a kind of way, we're just telling them that it's okay. Not that we're representing them in a bad way. But when you consider the outfits, for one thing, usually women, when they're older, they're represented as the stereotype of old lady with the loose, long dress. Her breasts are somewhere around their waistline, and they are wearing round collars for some reason. I don't know why. Pearls are optional, but pearls are very common, and their hair is up in a bun, right? And wearing glasses, sometimes a hat, sometimes a handbag. And men, they are usually wearing glasses. Yes, that's a must for men. Bald, or wearing a hat and suspenders and a scarf. I don't know why, but people decided that if grandpa is not wearing a scarf, he should be wearing a tie, especially butterfly one, a bow tie. I don't know why, but that's how we usually have older people represented in coursebooks, right? And I've even heard people who were involved in the creation of materials, and one of them said, "Oh, look, I got this illustration from the artist. He just sent me, and it is ageist, it is stereotyped, but it's so cute, so I'll just keep it." Well, that calls for some research, doesn't it? But anyway, the cute factor is also a big part of it. So I can see where that thinking line came from. I can see that. And it's just like, it's a visual reflection of elder speak, is when we talk about, when we talk to older people as if they were children, sometimes not even children, we would talk like that, more like puppies. Like, "Oh, you're okay. Oh, granny. Oh, do." So it's othering in a very strange way, in a very harmful way. And also, when we have this kind of representation of older adults in course books, what happens is, if we have older adults studying, will they see themselves in the course book if the only representation of somebody their age is just a grandfather, grandmother? What if they are not even married? What if they just don't care about this kind of position in their lives? So is this the only kind of role they can occupy in our society nowadays? So when we have these representations in course books, we are telling our students, do they belong there? Should they be studying, or should they be baking cookies at home, right? And what can we do? One, represent older adults as normal people. And I say normal because what is normal? But represent older adults as regular, normal people living their lives, which means they have a life, right? They must have a life. They must have other interests and relations, and they go places. You never see like older adults at the supermarket or the cinema just having a good time, minding their own business and working, or just walking around, but not with the walking cane stereotype, right? Just normal people. And when I say that, when people come to me and say, "But how am I supposed to do that?" Say, think of yourself. Think of yourself when you're 75, for instance. Will you be that person that you are representing there? How do you think you will look like, and what your life will be like? That's a good start. 2, be mindful when requesting illustrations depicting older people. A very dear friend of mine once told me about illustrations. She told me it's not so much about what we ask, it has to do what is in the repertoire of the artist. And because we live in an ageist society, chances are you will receive an image that comes from his repertoire of learning that older people have to be chubby, short, walking cane, hair in a bun, all that. And so when we request illustrations, we just have to tell them exactly what you have in mind. And even the best artist with the best intentions might go one way or the other, right? Or 88 to 800. So either they will represent as the frail, helpless old lady or old man, or the super modern, green-haired, crazy, out-of-the-box woman. That's fine as well, right? We all age, so we of course will age in 100,000 different ways. But the thing is, why not try to represent more variety, right? And just tell artists what you need, and prefer to represent older adults as active people who work, socialize with friends, and use technology, right? WhatsApp's a big hit with older people. They communicate and they like call and they use it a lot. So, and they have their jobs or even voluntary work, and they have groups of friends, and it's not only their family circle, it's much more than that. And include older adults as much as possible in varied roles. They don't need to be the star of the page or the focus of the unit. They can just be there, because that's what happens in life, isn't it? As we grow old, we tend to keep going places and keep having friends, and it's not a rare fact. It's just something, it's just life, actually, right? And give them, please, a name, a voice, a life. It's not only about being a grandma or grandpa. It's much, much more than that, right? And but then, how can we do it? It might be hard. When you have a look, when you buy your book, you raise up B1, you see there lesson 3, which I'm so proud of and so happy to see it ready here. And you see that is a lesson on the simple past. There's nothing really polemic there. There's nothing polemical or something that would challenge students' beliefs, or maybe there is, you never know. But when you see the topic is social me, so there's this person, if we describe it without really giving details, we'll just say it's a simple past lesson where we see a person sharing their pictures online, right? Sharing their holiday pictures online and telling their friends what they did. So this could be on Facebook or Instagram, more like Facebook by the layout of it. But then that's it. And then a friend commenting, saying, wow, that was so nice. I didn't have holidays this year, and so on, because I had to work. I had to help my daughter. And the first person was saying, yeah, I didn't work. I just took a vacation. Of course, I didn't work. I was on holiday, so I had fun. I did this and that and that. Lovely. When you describe like this, it could be any lesson, anywhere. But the point is, the main character is Lorna. Lorna is 70 years old. She's single. She has no grandchildren whatsoever. And she traveled. Wherever she lived, we never got to that point, but she went to Recife for her holidays, and she spent some days there, and she had a great time, and she went places, she visited many things, and she learned to dance frevo, which is that hard. It's really hard. And she played a bit of drums, and she had a great time, and she didn't want to come back home. And that's it. But when you look at the images closely, then you see, wait, oh God, she's an older woman. She's in her 70s, and she's traveling, she's wearing jeans, she's got long hair, red lipstick. Oh, but can you have long hair after a certain age? Can you wear makeup after a certain age? Oh, there she is, dancing the frevo with a very short skirt. Can you do that after a certain age? Ooh. So it's challenging many preconceptions, many stereotyped visions we have of older people in a very subtle way, which is the way it should be. It should be common. It should be nothing that different to see an older woman having fun, having a good time. And she's got her makeup on, her nail polish on, and she was at this nice hotel. She was all by herself, so there was no man to defend her, to assist her in any way, or grandchildren, or no, she was just traveling by herself and having a good time. And that's what I mean by all these. We have to normalize, we have to think it's not like they are old, so they should just bake cookies and take care of grandchildren. No, it's us. It's not them and us, or them against us. No, it's us. It's us at any time of our lives, right? And well, we travel, or we used to before the pandemic. We have our friends, we talk and we have fun, and that's it. Showing older people as normal people who have fun, people who have a good time, people who live and have names and have lives and all that. And well, if you're still in doubt, send me a line. I'd be more than glad to help you in any doubts, or to find ways through which you could represent older people, ourselves, our older selves, in a different way, right? And there are references here, not many, just 3 of them. And that's it. Thank you so very much. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yes, I can't do that. Okay, there's a red button saying stop sharing.
So Ella, thank you so much for that presentation.
James.
It was great, and of course this is a really important topic for us with Raise Up. This is one of our topics on our list, people who we are not happy about the representation of. So obviously we were really happy to work with you on the lesson in the book and for this presentation today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
I have a question for you from the chat. So this is from Eleni. So she asks, it seems natural that we'll have fewer older adults in course books aimed at children aged, sort of 10 to 12, for example. So after all, there is a concern for having a target age group very widely represented in the books they're going to use. Do you believe you'd have different results if you'd analyse books aimed at adults?
Oh, yes and no. To start with, I understand that it's important to have in children's books images of people they would identify with. But why is it that they could not identify themselves with older people? Like maybe their grandparents, maybe their teachers, maybe somebody in their family, in their relations. Why is it that they should just be invisible and not worth mentioning? Well, and something that we've been living currently is like pyramids have been inverting perhaps. So the age pyramid, we used to have a large base with children and then very narrow top with older adults. And now it's coming like this, and now it's starting to change in many countries. We have already got a lot more older people than children. So why shouldn't we represent older adults more? And I'm not saying like 90%. I'm just asking for 13%. That's not that much, is it? Even for children. And when you check books aimed at adults, the situation is not really different. I've seen that, and they are usually in the adjectives and the superlatives units. That's where you're bound to find them, and the family too, of course.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. So, thank you for the
Thank
presentation.
you again.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, James.